Hi, welcome to the Visionista podcast. I'm your host, Jessica East of Nor Marketing and PR. This podcast is for entrepreneurs where we talk about business and work-life balance. Welcome to the Visionista podcast. I'm your host, Jessica East, and I am here with my friend and sorority sister, Betsy Newman of Newman Gasket Company. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Do you want to give everybody like a quick introduction to what you do at Newman?
Of course. So I am VP. So I'm second generation business owner. And that means like all of you out there that run your own companies, you do all of the things. And we make gaskets, O-rings, and custom molded rubber parts for the food, pharmaceutical, beverage, and cosmetic industries.
So that's quite a bunch of things that you make, or like a lot of applications that they go to.
Yes. And we have about 15,000 SKUs.
So that's a lot.
Of variety. Yeah, a lot of variety of product, a lot of variety in industry. We kind of specialize in compliance. So compliance to FDA and pharmaceutical regulations. That's where we have made our niche in the market.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned that you were second generation. Your parents started the company. Remind me what year they started the business.
My dad started the business in 1973 out of my grandmother's basement. So definitely like a bootstraps story, the American dream. So
awesome. And then you and your brother are but you're in charge now, correct?
Yeah, we run the business. We have a sister that is also an owner.
Okay.
And participates in a very like peripheral manner. So, yep, we currently run the business and are responsible. Both of my parents have passed, so this is our responsibility.
Awesome. So the topic for today was branding and specifically rebranding. And I reached out to you not only because we have a good relationship and I figured I could, coerce you into doing my podcast with me, but we had a branding conversation a few months ago, and we went through a couple different phases of some logos. We looked at just kind of zhuzhing up, freshening up the existing logo, as well as a complete and total redesign. And at the end of that process, I think it was you, your brother, and one other person. So it was a group of three to kind of, go through and figure these things out. Ultimately, you decided not to rebrand. So I wanted to just kind of get your thought process and how you and the team went through, thinking, hey, do we need to rebrand? Like, what made you consider that? And then at the end of it, after seeing the options, why did you decide to stay with where you are? So I guess that's a loaded two-part question, but like from beginning to end, how did you make those decisions?
So it kind of started where we needed a new website. We want to eventually have like a customer portal and some other stuff, but that really needed to start with a new, more fleshed out website. Ours is currently like late 90s, early 2000s tastic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was right. So we decided that, if we're doing this website and we're doing all of this other stuff, we're rewriting copy, we're really kind of doing a lot as far as an online platform and rewriting copy for a lot of our kind of PDF and paper-based literature and all this stuff. So, and we've been kind of going through the process of redoing that literature and writing copy and all of that over the last couple years. And we thought, we've had like some different versions of our old logo, and we were kind of like, well, if this is the time if we're going to rebrand, this is a serious time to consider it. Since the website would be going, we're working on that, and we could slowly rebrand the other parts of our literature and media and different things. So we're like, let's explore this. We're also exploring graphics and how to best display our products, because they're not super great to like photograph. They're flat, they're not dimensional, they're black. So many things that make them very hard to put out there digitally. So it was just let's explore this. We kind of looked at some different options. I contacted Jessica because I know she does this kind of work. And I think we were like, we kind of just want to refresh. We're a very established brand in our market. We're super well recognized, and so much so that like I came into a business that was in this place of being recognized, and people who knew who we were, and even people that like I run into that kind of work in these facilities are like, oh, I think I like recognize your brand. And it's just sort of weird because it's not something you like buy at the grocery. And so it just felt like the time to do it. And then we got into the process, and we were kind of looking at them, and there was some stuff we really liked. And we had also been doing some market research with the company that we'd hired to do our web, because they're doing like web analysis and a whole host of things as a service. And so they'd done a lot of product research, and we'd even thought about like exploring new like web addresses and other things. And we kind of found that people were going after like our name, our market. They were trying to hit those like marks, and at the end of the day, it just didn't feel right. Like there wasn't anything that we thought kind of left us better off, if that makes sense at the end of the day.
It does. And I think that is not bad. I'm one of probably the few creatives who does not demand on starting working with new people and completely redoing their logo. I've heard from so many clients, past and present, who start working with a new designer and they're like, oh, well, this logo is dated, we need to redo it. And then they redo the whole thing, and the client's kind of like, well, you're the expert, I guess I'll do whatever you say. I'm actually not part of that school of thought. So when you guys decided not to change your logo, I didn't have, I wasn't personally offended. I didn't have, any real question or concern about that, because I think branding, and I have a question down my list about this, but, branding, and you said just a minute ago, people recognize the name, people recognize the mark. And so when you start over, you have to start not necessarily from scratch, because like when people speak the name, obviously there's no visual with that. But if people see the name and it's in a different color or a different logo mark or something, it takes a minute to get that back into their mind that, oh, we're still talking about the same person. And I don't want to say like you lose any kind of footing in the market, but you kind of have to say your name 2 or 3 more times than what you would have before you switched. Now, should you not switch like ever under any circumstance? Of course not. We've seen some things here recently where people have been rebranding because maybe their name is just, I don't want to say their name is offensive, but maybe their name isn't bringing about the type of, the type of feeling that they want. Like 50 years ago, 80 years ago, their name was fine. And now the name's kind of like, no, that's not really saying what we want to say about our brand. I'm thinking about like Uncle Ben's and Aunt Jemima and some of the singers that changed their names because they were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be glorifying things. If there's a merger of companies and you need to create a new name and you can't put both names together, like, there are times when you absolutely need to rebrand and it makes sense to do it. But I meet a lot of people who have 5-year-old companies, 6-year-old companies, and they're like, oh, I'm just tired of looking at the logo. And I'm not sure that that's the best reason to rebrand. One of these questions here is that I wanted to ask you was, when you're branding or rebranding, what operational costs are considered? Because you do a lot of shipping. You mentioned your website, you mentioned some other marketing collateral that you have. Like, did you guys sit down with a spreadsheet and look at, like, if we go with this new logo, these are all the things that we're going to have to redo?
We didn't. I think we had like a mental kind of list, like we would have to update, it would have kind of been a slow rollover. Like we weren't going to toss out like products or whatever, but we would have had to change labeling in our ERP system. We would have had to have, updated our boxes. That we ship out. We would have, marketing collateral, business cards. The website would be huge because it's in so many places.
Mhm.
Um, thus the
Apparel. Do
thought
you have
of
like uniforms or anything that people wear when they're working?
just Cintas, so that wouldn't really change. Like it's just literally the embroidered name. There's no like logo. Um, we do have some like minimal um like apparel and stuff that would have to be replaced for salespeople. Um, we're pretty much out of giveaways, so that all would have to be redone if you were going to do that. So new signage for the front of the business.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, no, it would not have been a cheap undertaking at all. So um,
And I think that's definitely something that people maybe don't think of, like how many places their logo appears and how many ways the colors of their logo, the fonts in their logo, if there's a font, if there's a graphic in their logo that they then pick up and use other places, like a swoosh or a line or a circle or some other custom shape. There's a lot of elements in the logos that can carry over into every other thing that your business does. I don't know if you guys have fleet, like any trucks or like delivery trucks, or if you all just mail it. But if you had fleet graphics, I actually have a couple clients who are in HVAC, and one of them has been struggling with their logo for a while, for various reasons. This was before we started doing like all of their things. We were just a one of their vendors that helped them with marketing pieces, and they got a whole bunch of brand new work trucks wrapped with the wrong logo because they had to change their logo because the new person didn't like the logo. And it was more a refresh instead of a completely new thing. And it's just similar enough. They missed it. And then I think they noticed it probably a month later, like, oh, all of these brand new work bands that we just got have the old logo on them. So, and that brings me to my next question too, a refresh versus a rebrand. We looked at both for you. What were your reasons behind like a refresh versus a rebrand? Do you remember what you guys were kind of thinking about at the time? It's been a few months ago, so.
yeah, I think, our web designers were asking us about color, so kind of getting a branding package together.
Mhm.
Um, I was cleaning out my parents' house and I actually found all of the original, like how they had kind of developed
Oh, that's
the
awesome.
original, which is such a different process than it is today. So I
Mhm.
have all of this stuff, how it was kind of developed, and it's been kind of there's been multiple refreshes along over the years, but I kind of found the originals um, of that, and
I would love to see those, by the way.
I will
Like, take pictures or scan them or whatever. That would be so cool.
I will definitely do that because it was such an interesting process to see how that was done before, you know, your computer, and there's so many renditions and overlays and a lot of vellum and that kind of stuff to kind of give you this whole idea.
Mhm.
So you know, as so a refresh was kind of really what we were looking at. We didn't necessarily want to completely rebrand. I know we kind of explored that and it kind of seemed like a cool idea. But again, we kind of came back to this. We still need to be recognizable
Mhm.
when people go to do because of our industry, because we are dealing in compliance. We don't want anybody to have a moment of panic thinking they have the wrong product because our products have to be validated in a lot of facilities and different things. So because of our industry, you don't want people to get product and be like, what happened here? Like, is this the right product? Is this, you know, is this the same thing we've always been getting? Like, you change anything in our industry and people just have a complete meltdown. So, so no, I'm not even kidding. Like we change like up like an ingredient in a formula and you have to send out like and change notification and all of this stuff. And people are like asking a million questions and like it's really not a material change. Like it's not something that's huge. It shouldn't affect their product. We've done all our same testing. Like it's, you know, like something has been discontinued. We had to replace it with something else. Like it functions the same way. Um,
Yeah.
so, you know, um, you don't want anybody kind of having that breakdown and you also have to remember for us that there are multiple people consuming our product. So you have engineers that are speccing our product, you have purchasing people that are buying our products, and then you have maintenance people that are installing our products.
Mhm.
So you have to get a lot of people used to a new brand identity or a new logo or whatever. And so you don't want to get it to that installation guy and have him have like, I don't think this is the same thing. And then
Mhm.
you're running it all the way back up the chain. Um, so, and again, we kind of considered rebranding as something more generic, like Newman, like not Newman Sanitary Gasket, but Newman, just Newman or whatever, to kind of give us more of an umbrella
Mhm.
to sell more products. We're looking to expand our product lines. And so we were kind of exploring something that was just more generic. So it wasn't always gaskets. But again, through the research, we found that people were going for Newman sanitary gaskets. They were chasing the sanitary portion
Mhm.
um, of that. So um, we were like, that just seems like a poor idea if everybody's kind of chasing us
Mhm.
to change our name.
Mhm.
So
And that makes sense, because you've been in business for a really long time and you've built up that brand recognition and the name, and the quality too. That's why all these people and all these industries keep going to your specific products and your specific brands. So, as silly as it sounds, people, not everybody, but sometimes people come down on artists. Oh, all you do is just make pretty pictures all day. I literally had a guy tell me that at my first job out of college. My computer was not working, and he was like, "Oh, I'll just get you a box of crayons." I was like, thanks a lot, Jack Wagon. I actually need my computer. Art's important, and what we do is important, and making that mark that people are going to associate with your name, your brand, your service, your product is really, really important. So, the fact that you recognize that, I think, is amazing. And I think business owners, business leaders who are able to recognize that can then really leverage that across their product lines for growth and for sustainability where they are. Which kind of leads me into my next question. Actually, I've been trying to do better with segueing. But anyway, the next question I had for you was the insights for carrying the torch of an existing company, like just in general, and then also into like the new COVID times and, everything being so remote. You have people on site who are manufacturing things because that's what you do. And then you ship things out. So you're not, you're B2B, you're not dealing with customers like making sandwiches or selling t-shirts or anything like that. But you have people, on the premise who are doing things. So I guess that's kind of a loaded question too. I know we've talked about that before, just like at lunch and things, but now that it's you and your brother and your sister to some respects, yes, you have this business and yeah, your parents built it, but you have to keep going. And, you can't always do the same old thing that they did when they started it because business is different now. So, how do you guys approach leading the business and driving the business forward?
So for us, a big thing has been moving our technology forward.
Mhm.
So we were working on a sort of green screen. I can't think of the platform at the moment, but a very antiquated system from that was programmed back in the 70s and 80s. It wasn't even like a widely used program. It was something like our accountant actually built this program. So, I mean, it worked. It worked. We had financials. We could process orders. It would hold inventory, but that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have really worked to move forward. So we implemented an ERP system. If you ever want to do that as a business, Godspeed to you because it is painful.
I feel like that's another podcast episode, maybe. What to do and what not to do with Betsy Newman.
I mean, if you got to do it, you got to do it. It's just not going to be an enjoyable process. So, and apparently ours went really well compared to others. And I don't even want to know what that really means because
you just said that it was terrible. And if yours was good, what is bad? Is that
I don't
the rooftop? What does that even mean? That's so ambiguous.
I don't know. I don't know if the wheels just fell off these companies for 4 months while they were fixing what didn't go well after implementation. I have no idea, but not fun. Not fun. God bless our comptroller who helped us tremendously in this. She deserves a crown or something. I don't know. And so anyway, so we've just been focused on trying to move the business forward in a technology way, really kind of trying to up our kind of I guess our HR sort of and our personnel. So kind of trying to hire at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
My dad always kind of maybe promoted people that didn't have the skill set but had worked for us or had kind of a different approach. So we've kind of taken a we're going to pay the money and get a better, more skilled person in this position as people leave or as turnover happens or whatever. We've been kind of in the mindset of we're going to upgrade to somebody that maybe has a more skill sets or can bring more to the table. And we're fortunate that we're in the position to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So those have kind of been our focuses on kind of improving the business and taking it up the next level. My brother has a lot of like kind of crazy ideas about products and that kind of stuff. Like that's his lane and I just let him go with it. But sometimes keeping him focused is really difficult. So like he'll just come up with like these weird ideas and I'm kind of here like sometimes I'm like tapping the brake and being like, you gotta finish the first one before I can let you go to the next one. And so
A round table with your brother added would definitely be a fun podcast. I haven't had much experience with him, but he seems fun.
Okay, if that's how you feel. Yeah, it's interesting working with family. It's challenging. It can be really difficult, and you can also be really unprofessional sometimes in the workplace, and it's not ideal. But sometimes, your siblings, especially, they just know those buttons to hit. Like they're experts at it. They have their whole life developed and honed those buttons, and
Do you guys do that like on a regular basis, or are you like mature enough and adult enough now you're like, no, Zen, I'm walking away? Like what is that like?
I mean, 90% of the time, probably 98% of the time, it is fine. But sometimes, like, they just, you know what I mean? They just know that, like, it's not even like an intentional button, but it's there. And I don't try to do it. Like, it's not something we try to do. But at the same time, like, I think it's just easier to have those sorts of like disagreements and just get really frustrated and not deal with them professionally because you don't sort of have those professional boundaries in place. So, I mean, I think anybody that works with family kind of knows like, um, like there's just not professional boundaries in place. So it's harder to keep it on the professional level all the time. Like it doesn't happen all the time, but there are occasions where it's just
I can see where that would be difficult. I have known two different couples, actually three different couples now, that are in business together. Now they're married couples, and they each one did a sign shop, one's a realtor pair, so they're doing real estate, and the other one is in more of a tech business. And I know two of the couples I know better than the other one, and sometimes there were some hard days that did not stop at 5 or 6 o'clock when they left work, because then you go home with that person and then it's just kind of, it's all one big glob. And if there was an argument over the weekend or the night before, it might come back into the office the next day. And so I was always struck with how difficult that must be to work with people that you're really, really close to. But, when they were having great days, it was like, wow, because when you know people that well, like you read each other's minds. So, how much more quickly and efficiently do you get things done if you're like, yeah, and you're on the same page. So, I love my husband, but I think that if we work well together, we support each other. I do, marketing, he does IT. So we support each other in those areas. But I think if we were working in the same business, in the same company, I think it would be absolutely awful because it's nice to have a break sometimes. So, kudos to you guys for keeping everything going. Obviously you're doing well at it. So, I think that's something to be said for being able to go along.
Well, and I think as siblings, we do get to go to our separate houses. We have, my brother is married, so he has his spouse to kind of blow off steam to. I have friends that I can be like, oh my God, you will not believe what Dave did today. Like I could just, kill him or whatever. So, so I think it's a little easier than being married and working together, but still, working in a family business is definitely a different sort of dynamic, and
It's got to be really fulfilling though. Like when you accomplish new things, like the website you're working on and some of the new products, like, do you guys ever just sit back and you're like, wow, we did a good job. Like, go us.
um my brother will do that, and like he'll be like, we kind of had a benchmark month of like we had $1 million in shipped product that month.
That's
And
awesome.
so that was just back in October, which is end of year, and like, you know, it's been COVID and it's been a lot of things, and
This year's been a
and so, you know, he was like, I'm kind of back to April style quarantine where I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna go places. And he's like, let's go to dinner and celebrate. I'm like, yeah, no. And so anyway, he's much better about that than I am. It's just one more thing off the list for me. So probably something I need to do better at is celebrating those wins.
Would you be mad at me if I sent you a glitter bomb? Because $1 million in a month for ship product, that's pretty goddamn good, especially in the middle of, you know, everything that's going on right now.
Please don't send me a glitter bomb, because then I would probably have to clean that up. But no, it is exciting, and it was a new milestone.
Send you one piece of like big confetti then. I'll be like,
all right, perfect. Perfect. You know, and I don't ever see that as a personal win. I see that as a corporate win, because, you know, there's almost 60 other people that are making this engine go. Like, you know, I just deal with the grumpy people. That's my job, you know. And I also get a lot of the HR stuff, and I'm not a fan, but that's okay. One day we will be big enough to have a full-time HR person.
Maybe 2021. Put that on your to-do list for 2021.
I don't know that we'll be like, I don't know. There's got to be a better solution. Anyway, wow. I loathe hiring. So yeah, COVID. I mean, we just did the recommendations of the CDC. We went through and looked at workspaces and made sure that everybody was an appropriate way apart. We put in a mask mandate. We put in automated hand washers to encourage people to wash their hands, and a hand washing policy to ensure everybody wash their hands when they come in, once they've taken a break. Those kinds of things to help the spread. We were also fortunate enough that we use alcohol to clean our spaces because of restrictions on other cleaning agents and stuff for pharmaceutical. So we already had a 55-gallon drum of alcohol. So we just passed out bottles of spray alcohol to everyone. And we're like, just feel free to sanitize all the time. So everybody, all of the things, all of the time, just feel free to spray that down. And, you know, we went around and kind of sprayed doorknobs and door handles, and like just to make sure everybody knew like we were serious, and like this is something we're worried about, so you should be worried about it. So trying to set a tone, and you know, we then assigned that task to other people.
Well, so that's is an interesting point. That kind of made me think, you know, once the torch was passed and your parents, you know, were retired, and it was you and your brother who were like taking leadership roles, did you have a hard time getting people to, you know, see you as the boss, or were you like, did you have any hills to climb there, or was that transition pretty easy? Like that just popped into my head when you were talking about that.
So our transition was not, it was tumultuous. So we were actually participating in and not tumultuous in like, anyway, it's a long story. I will give you the quick and dirty.
Okay.
So we were participating in there's a part of UC at Cincinnati is called the Goring Center for Family Business. And so they have essentially set up a center that does leadership training, that does business transition kind of frameworking and all of this stuff. And our attorneys are like involved and kind of sponsor part of that program. And so we were in that program when we found out my dad had terminal cancer. And so we were working through this program. So essentially, like, we at least had that support. And so we were kind of, my parents had done a really good job of doing sort of the back end of transitioning stuff, of like getting all of the legal, all of the, like a lot of that very technical stuff in line.
And that's a big process too.
That is a process that took and evolved over decades. I mean, they started that in, I want to say back in the late 80s. Please note I was born in 1983. So that is a process they started in the late 80s, buying things like life insurance policies to cover any death taxes, and paperwork to be put in place to keep the business going for our benefit. Later it moved on to, you know, sort of what that would look like. But it was the front end of stuff, the emotional stuff, the like transitioning and like, and sort of some of that getting through some of those things. So one of the first things they tell you is you can only go as far in this process as any one person in your, like, your group is willing to go. And my dad just did not want to let go of those reins. Like, even though his daily like task in the business was minimal, like he went over finances, he kind of answered some questions. He, you know, like my day-to-day responsibilities are not insurmountable. Like I have projects and that kind of stuff, but my day-to-day stuff that I have to deal with is a lot of what he dealt with. And in general, it's not a full day's work.
Shh, don't tell anybody that.
Well, I have plenty to do, don't get me wrong, but like the stuff that has to be done day to day, you know, by somebody managing the company is not, you know, he had worked to get himself, so he did not have to work so hard. I mean,
well,
I can remember
by this point.
Yeah, we had people. I mean, when I was little, he was gone constantly. He missed birthdays. Like, there was sacrifices. Like, I kind of get the, like, great side of, like, being second gen, where I'm not struggling and having to make a lot of those sacrifices and having to miss things that are important to make this go. Like, that's a beautiful part of being second gen, is it hasn't required the level of sacrifice that it does when you're first starting a business. And I remember those days. Like, I mean, I know the business was probably 15 plus years old by the time I could remember those things, but I can still remember that sacrifice. I can remember my dad looking at my mom when we got new equipment and goes, "Here's your new house." Like, you know, he thought it was funny. My mom
offended? I don't know that I'd be happy. I'd be like, I can't plant flowers there. Where's my kitchen?
Well, and I mean, I think it was 3 kids and like, you know, they had put an addition on like an old Rambler and it kind of worked, but like, you know, my dad's screaming like, "I can't see the TV through the kids," because, you know, console televisions in the 80s. My mom's, you know, "What do you want me to do? Hang it from the ceiling?" You know.
And maybe, now we would have a drop down screen.
Exactly. Maybe today we could have made this house work.
That's probably how that happened. Somebody got tired of it, and so they were like, "Let's just put it in the ceiling." That's funny.
So, like, you know, it's one of those things where, like, my mom was like, you know, like, again, she understood the sacrifices. Like, I guess when they were dating, on Christmas Eve, they had to go to my grandmother's house and pack and take an order to the airport for Tropicana, because this was like a big order and like a big account. And so you had to do whatever you had to do. I was like, really? It's Christmas Eve. Like, this is what we're doing. And he's like,
Wow.
yep, this is what we got to do.
That is
So,
amazing, though, that was the very beginning of their relationship. Like, she was well aware of what all was going on, and she was like, "Yeah, I like your face enough. Let's do this thing." That's
yeah. So, they decided, that was, she knew what she was getting into, but,
yeah.
we're not in that position where we've had to make a lot of those sacrifices that I know they made early on. Um, so the transition was definitely back,
Mhm.
um, was more challenging just because of the situation. And it was challenging because I didn't, like, in the loss of a parent, I didn't have anywhere I could go that was normal. Like,
Mhm.
that loss was present at work, that loss was present at home, it was everywhere. So again, when you're kind of in that family business, there is it's hard to escape certain things that,
Yeah.
would give you a break from some of those life events. Um and we had like a transition leadership team in place, and so we kind of did some alternative stuff. And my mom was also sort of like, she was the president of the company and oversaw, so she could kind of,
Mhm.
if anybody was doing anything that was just bananas and they came to her about it, she could pump the brakes, which was both good and bad, because my brother was a little bit bad about, like, if he didn't get his way on something, he would go to her and then she'd be like, "Oh, you need to do it this way." And I'm like, I had to finally go to her and I'm like, Bon, I love you, but you've got to stop this nonsense. Like, why are you like overriding things that three people agree on and Dave just wants his way? And she's like, well, he came and talked to me about it and it seemed reasonable. And I was like, you need to call and ask questions before you make a verdict.
Yeah. So kind of
And so,
at home in the business.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's kind of, yeah, it's again, family business
Mhm.
gets complicated.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's really awesome, though, that they started laying the groundwork for the transition when they did. Like, obviously, he couldn't have seen the future to know what was going to happen. I think that is something that a lot of business owners don't think about. Like, you have to pay your taxes, you have to make a certain amount to pay your employees and pay yourself and keep the lights on. And I think some of those other things, like, shoot, what is the word? It's not estate planning when you
it
plan for
is estate planning. I mean, it's
generation, but there's a different word for it because my
like
attorney said something to me.
succession planning.
That's yes. I had never thought about that, and then I had an attorney mention that to me, like, "Oh, well, have you thought about succession planning?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, no, I haven't. Like, what would I do? If I got hit by an RTA, which my office is in downtown Dayton, that's entirely possible. They drive like maniacs because they know they can. What would I do? I don't have a second in command, to run the business. That person is me. Like, I still need to find somebody to train. I have that person in mind. COVID has really set a lot of my plans back this year, not only for growth but for that as well. My kids are little and I don't know that they're going to want my business, but my business is actually worth something now, and if I died today, it could be sold for a decent enough amount of money. And but somebody would have to access all my files and keep things going, and that's the piece I don't have. And I was in business for probably 6 or 7 years before I even knew that I needed it. So I think that's a really good point. And I think if you're starting a business, if you're in business and you don't have that, you should definitely put that on your to-do list to do before the end of the year, like start thinking about who's that person, what happens if you're not around, who would run it for you. We're faced with COVID. What if you get sick for a month and you can't go into the office and work? I mean, I know people work from home, but what if you're so sick you can't even pick up a computer or a phone? Who is you if you can't be you for a minute? So I think the fact that they were thinking about that is huge, because I think a lot of people don't. That's one of those hidden things that's really, really important, but it's hidden and it's not important. It's not in your face screaming. So it gets overlooked. So
Yeah.
I think that's
Well,
really
and you have to remember, by the time they were doing that kind of work, the business was 15, 20 years old.
Mhm.
So, I mean, they weren't super early on in that adventure, but don't feel like you're behind that. I mean, we had a 45-year-old, between 30 and 40-year-old business when we were kind of doing the actual succession planning. They had done the estate planning, which is a portion of
Mm.
succession planning, but
Yeah.
a
This
lot
is a
of
thing
that,
to keep in mind, not to
yeah.
forget about it.
So don't feel like we were way ahead of the game here. They definitely had those thoughts, and it's definitely worth talking to an attorney. I definitely recommend the Goring Center for Family Business at University of Cincinnati. They were a great
Link
resource
at
in
the
that.
I when I post my podcast through Anchor, there's actually description and I can put links to things. So I'll put a link if it's okay. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn. So if people want to connect with you or follow you, they can. And then I'll put a link to the Goring Center. Am I saying that right? Goring Center at Cincinnati.
Yeah, the Goring
So
Center for Family Business.
so anybody else who maybe is building a family business or is in a family business and they want to look at, having transitioning that over to other members of the family, it sounds like they have a lot of really good resources. So I'll put a link to that in the podcast as well, so that if you're listening and you're like, wow, this sounds like a good idea, you can check that out. And since colleges are all remote, do you think that's a remote thing now? Like, could you do that if you're not local to Cincinnati?
There were companies from Dayton area that participated in the cohort we were in, and then there was other Cincinnati businesses participating as well.
Mhm.
It definitely had value in being in person, and if you're not in a huge hurry for any reason, I would wait till it's in person again, because it gives you the opportunity. They sort you into like first gen and second gen pods,
Okay.
or essentially the generation, because there was some third, fourth, fifth generation businesses
Oh, wow.
participating in this. So yeah, so really cool. So they call it first gen, second gen, but it may be third gen, fourth gen. So essentially whoever's in charge now, and then whoever is kind of coming up as leadership in the business.
Mhm.
Um, or would be second generation owner, whatever that looks like. And so they kind of put you in cohort pods, and you have people that can kind of relate to what you're going through, and kind of like, I'm not really friends with them, but it was nice to have somebody that got it,
Mhm.
because the reality of you just meeting or knowing somebody that's in that situation, um,
There's probably not many people like you just nationally, honestly. I mean, most businesses fail within the first 5 to 7 years. So, having something that's gone generation to generation to generation, you're probably in a very small group.
yeah, I don't know. So it was just really like, I don't have that connection among any of my other friends or peers that I have met along the way. Or we haven't found that connection, at least in anybody I've really met. And so it was really nice to have that. It also gave like the people that were kind of getting ready to turn over some of um, that kind of support too. And they had like group leaders who were people that had kind of helped, had been, they were usually volunteers. They don't get paid, but they were people that were professionals that had done some business transitions and different things. So it was nice to have that support and just that group. And they even started like round table luncheons and that stuff based on your kind of pod or class and different things. So, and it was really interesting to kind of see what some of the other struggles for other companies were. While we were in a definite shit situation, there were some other situations where I was like, I'm glad that is not my situation.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of nice to get some perspective and to kind of have that support. So I would definitely go in person if you can, just because I think having those relationships and being able to have that like just shared experience was totally worth it. And I don't know that it would be the same on like Zoom and Zoom breakout rooms and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. We've actually chatted for about an hour now, so I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I'm sure you've got like a bunch of emails that have popped up. If you had like one final thought, branding was our initial topic, but we've talked about so many other really great things. Again, I'm really, really glad that you took the time out today to chat with me. You know, branding, starting a business, staying in business, family business, you know, one final thought, like the most important thing to remember, what would that be? Not to put
The
you on
one
the
thing
spot or anything. You're
I
like,
think the one thing that always, and on a completely different note, the thing that other like keeps me going is this business is about a lot more than me. Like this isn't about me. It's about the people that work for me and their families and the medications and food that we help process. And I think just having a bigger sort of outlook on what you do and how it affects other people kind of helps to keep like passion and perspective and drive behind what you do. So I think just kind of always remembering like what you're sending out into the world and how you're making that just makes your work meaningful. And I that's sometimes that's what gets me through the day when I just want to be like, I'm done. I'm leaving.
yeah. Can I just say, I freaking love you, man. I love Betsy Newman there. I said it. I think you're awesome. And I'm so glad we're friends. And I'm so glad that you took the time out to chat with me today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, friend. It was fun. We'll have to do it again.
All right. This has been the Visionista.